I thought my husband just hated visiting my mom. She's just a lot, he'd say. Then I found a photo, him, dressed up, standing beside her, both wearing rings. That's not what you think, he told me. But the date was wrong. The timeline didn't match. And suddenly I realized. Tom had always been a little off around my mom. Not rude. Not distant enough to raise alarms. Just tight. Like he was constantly measuring himself. Watching what he said. Leaving early. I used to tease him about it. Relax, I'd say on the drive home. She's not that scary. And he'd just give that same half smile and say, she's intense. That was it. Always something simple. Something that didn't invite follow-up. I never pushed. Growing up with Sue Shaw meant understanding that not everyone could handle her. She has a way of filling a space, of turning conversations into something sharper without raising her voice. You learn to navigate around it. So I assumed that was all it was. Personality. Nothing deeper. We were in the middle of packing when everything shifted. The apartment in San Diego didn't feel like ours anymore. Half-filled boxes, open drawers, things stacked in corners like we were already halfway gone. Tom had already accepted the job in Boise, and we kept calling it a fresh start like that phrase could fix things we hadn't actually talked about. I was going through the hallway closet, sitting on the floor with a box between my knees. It was labeled documents, but it was mostly random things. Old folders, receipts, cables, stuff that had been moved from one place to another without ever being sorted. I almost skipped it. Then I remembered Tom telling me, months ago, not to worry about that box. Just leave that one, he'd said. It's nothing important. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Now, holding it, I did. I opened it slowly, like there was something inside I wasn't ready to see. At first, it was exactly what he said it was. Papers. Old envelopes. Nothing that mattered. Then I found the album. It was at the bottom, under everything else. No label. Just a plain cover. I hesitated. Not because I thought it was wrong to open it, but because something about it already felt off. I opened it anyway. The first few pages were normal. Photos of Tom in his 20s. Friends, casual moments, nothing out of place. I flipped through without thinking. Then I turned a page and stopped. It didn't register immediately. My brain tried to place it somewhere familiar, like it was a memory I'd forgotten. Tom was standing there, dressed up. Suit, clean, formal. Next to him was a woman. They were both smiling. And they were both wearing rings. For a second, I thought it was someone else. Someone who just looked like her. But the longer I stared, the more that idea fell apart. It was her. Sue Shaw. My mom. Same face. Same posture. Same way she slightly tilted her head when she smiled. I checked the corner of the photo. There was a date. Years before I met Tom. I flipped to the next page. Another photo. The two of them on a beach, closer this time. Comfortable. Another. Sitting at a table with two other people, like a quiet dinner. Then another. Her leaning into him, his arm around her like it belonged there. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't something small. It was a relationship. I could feel something tightening in my chest, slow and steady. I kept flipping through, even though I already understood what I was looking at. There were enough photos to tell a story. Enough to fill in a timeline I had never been told existed. That's when everything started connecting. The way Tom avoided staying too long at my mom's house. The way he never asked about her. The way she spoke to him careful, controlled, like she was choosing every word. I had noticed those things before. I just never questioned them. Because there was no reason to. Not until now. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor. Time felt strange. Slower. Like my mind was trying to delay something it couldn't stop. By the time Tom got home, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't calm either. I was just certain that whatever this was, it wasn't simple. He walked in like it was any other day. Keys on the counter. Jacket off. A quick glance at the half-packed boxes. Did you get through the closet? He asked. I didn't answer. I just picked up the photo and slid it across the table toward him. What is this? He looked down. And something changed in his face. Not panic. Not surprise. Recognition. Like he knew exactly what he was looking at and had already accepted what it meant. He closed his eyes for a second. Then he let out a slow breath. I was going to tell you. That was the first thing he said. Not confusion. Not denial. That? Something in me went cold. Tell me what? I asked. My voice sounded steady, but it didn't feel that way. He pulled out a chair and sat down. That before I met you. I was married. I didn't react. I just stared at him. He looked at the photo again, then back at me. And it was to your mom. The words didn't land all at once. They settled slowly, like something sinking. I waited for him to keep talking. To explain it in a way that made sense. He didn't rush. It didn't last, he said. We met, things moved fast, and it didn't work. We separated after about a year. Separated. The word stuck. Not divorced. Not finished. Just separated. I felt something shift again. Separated. I repeated. He nodded. We went our own ways. Different states. Different lives. That wasn't an answer. That was something else. Something incomplete. I leaned forward slightly. Did you divorce her? He didn't respond right away. And that silence said more than anything else. Tom, I said, quieter now. Did you divorce my mom? He looked at me. And for the first time, there was hesitation. Then he said it. No. The room felt smaller after that. Like everything had moved in closer. I stared at him, trying to process what that actually meant. So when you married me, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. He understood it anyway. His jaw tightened slightly. Technically, he said carefully, it was never finalized. Technically. That word felt heavier than anything else he'd said. I sat back slowly. Because now it wasn't just about the past. It was about the present. About what my life actually was. About what it had been built on. And the worst part wasn't even the answer. It was how calmly he said it. Like this was something that could be explained. Something that didn't change everything. But it did. It changed everything. I didn't react right away. That's the part that still feels strange when I think back on it. There was no yelling, no dramatic moment where everything exploded. Just silence stretching out between us while what he said settled into something heavier. Technically, I repeated quietly. That's what you're going with. Tom rubbed his face like he was already tired of the conversation before it even started. It wasn't like that, he said. We were done. We had been done for years. That's not what I asked. My voice came out sharper than I expected, but I didn't stop it. Were you still legally married to my mom when you married me? He looked at the table instead of me. Yes. There it was. Clear. Simple. No room to twist it into something else. I let out a breath that didn't feel like it helped. And you didn't think that was something I should know? I was going to tell you. He said it again, like repeating it would make it true. When? I asked. After we moved? After 10 years? After something forced you to. He didn't answer that. Instead, he leaned back slightly, like he was trying to create distance without actually getting up. It didn't matter anymore, he said. That part of my life was over. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out anyway. Not because it was funny. Because it didn't make sense. It didn't matter? I said. You were still married to my mom when you married me, Tom. Legally, yes. But not in any real way. I stared at him. That's not how that works. I know how it sounds. No, I said. I don't think you do. He finally looked at me then, like he was trying to gauge how bad this was going to get. We hadn't spoken in years, he said. We were living completely separate lives. There was nothing there anymore. You say that like it cancels it out. I'm saying it wasn't an active relationship. That doesn't change the fact that it existed on paper. That it still existed when you married me. He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to stay calm. I didn't think it would come back up, he said. That made something shift again. Come back up. I repeated. This isn't some old story from college. This is my mom. I know that. Then why didn't you tell me? He hesitated again. And this time, it felt different. Not like he didn't have an answer. Like he didn't want to say it. Because it was complicated, he said finally. Complicated for who? For everyone. I shook my head. No. It was simple. You tell me, and I decide what to do with it. That's how that works. I didn't want to drag that into what we had. What we had was already built on it. He didn't respond. Because there wasn't anything he could say to that. The room went quiet again. I looked down at the photo still sitting on the table. It felt different now. Heavier. Like it wasn't just evidence of something that happened. It was proof of something that had been hidden. You said you hadn't spoken to her, I said after a moment. Not in years, he replied. Not even when we started dating? No. Not when you realized who I was? That question hung there for a second. Because that part mattered. When we met, I had introduced myself fully. My name. My family. Where I grew up. He would have known. He would have recognized it. He nodded slowly. I knew. That was worse than anything else. You knew, I repeated. Yes. And you still didn't say anything. He shook his head slightly, like he was trying to explain something I wasn't understanding. I didn't think it would matter, he said. You and I were separate from that. You don't get to decide that. I wasn't trying to hurt you. That doesn't make this better. I could feel something building now. Not just confusion anymore. Not just shock. Something sharper. Did she know? I asked. He didn't answer right away. And I already knew what that meant. Tom. He looked at me. Yes, he said quietly. She knew. The room felt like it tilted slightly. She knew, I repeated. Yes. And neither of you thought to tell me. We thought, he stopped. You thought what? That it was in the past. I stared at him. Both of them. That realization settled in slowly. This wasn't just him. This wasn't just a decision he made on his own. My mom knew too. She knew I was dating him. She knew I married him. And she said nothing. I stood up suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor louder than it should have been. I need to go, I said. Where? He asked. You know where? He didn't try to stop me. Maybe he knew he couldn't. Maybe he understood that this part didn't belong to him anymore. I grabbed my keys without thinking, barely aware of anything except the noise in my head. The drive to San Jose felt longer than usual. Every red light stretched. Every mile felt heavier. I kept replaying everything in my mind. Every dinner. Every visit. Every moment where the two of them were in the same room and I didn't see it. How normal it all looked. How normal they made it look. And I kept coming back to the same thing. They both knew. By the time I pulled up to my mom's house, my hands were tight on the steering wheel. I sat there for a second before getting out. Because once I knocked on that door, there was no pretending anymore. No going back to not knowing. I walked up and knocked. It didn't take long. The door opened and Sue Shaw stood there, looking exactly the same as she always did. Composed. Controlled. Like nothing in the world could catch her off guard. But the moment she saw my face, something shifted. Not surprise. Recognition. Like she already understood why I was there. What happened? She asked. I didn't answer. I just held up the photo. For a second, she looked at it. Then she closed her eyes and sighed. That reaction hit harder than anything Tom had said. Because there was no confusion in it. No denial. Just acceptance. You knew, I said. It came out quieter than I expected. She nodded once. Yes. That was it. No explanation. No attempt to soften it. Just yes. And something inside me finally broke open. I don't remember stepping inside. One second I was standing on the porch, the next I was in her living room, the door closing behind me like something final. The house smelled the same. Fabric, starch, something warm in the air from whatever she'd been working on earlier. Normal. Completely normal. It made everything worse. She walked past me like this was just another visit, like I wasn't standing there holding a photo that had just torn through my entire life. Sit down, she said. I didn't. I stayed where I was, gripping the edge of the photo hard enough that it bent slightly in my hand. You knew, I said again. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. It was flat. She turned to face me fully this time. I did. No hesitation. No apology. Just a fact. I let out a breath that felt sharp. How long? I asked. Since you started seeing him, she said. I blinked. Since I started dating him. Yes. Not even when things got serious. Not when we moved in together. From the very beginning. And you didn't think that was something I needed to know? She tilted her head slightly, like she was considering how to answer in a way that would keep things calm. It didn't seem relevant anymore, she said. I laughed again. That same hollow sound. Not relevant. You and him built something separate from what we had. What you had? I repeated. You mean your marriage? She didn't flinch at the word. It wasn't much of one, she said. It ended quickly. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. I'm not saying it didn't exist. I'm saying it didn't matter anymore. It mattered to me. You didn't even know about it. That's the point. My voice finally cracked a little on that. She watched me carefully, like she was studying a reaction instead of feeling anything about it. I didn't want to complicate things for you, she said. There it was. The same word. Complicate. I felt something tighten in my chest again. Complicate. I said. You think this would have been more complicated than finding out like this? You were happy, she said simply. I stared at her. You don't get to decide that for me. I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth. She didn't answer that right away. Instead, she walked over to the couch and sat down, folding her hands together like this was a conversation she'd already had in her head 100 times. You would have overreacted, she said. That stopped me. Overreacted. Yes. I shook my head slowly. You don't get to decide how I react to something like that. I know you, she said. You would have made it bigger than it needed to be. It is big. Not in the way you're thinking. I took a step closer. You were still married to him when I married him. We were separated. That's not the same thing. It was over. Legally, it wasn't. She sighed slightly, like this was becoming repetitive. You're focusing on the technical side of it, she said. Because it matters. It didn't change anything about your relationship. You don't know that. I do. How? Because you were happy, she said again. That word felt different now. Not comforting. Dismissive. Like everything I felt right now didn't count because I hadn't known earlier. You let me build a life with someone you were still legally tied to, I said. We weren't tied in any real way. That's not how that works. She leaned back slightly. You're making this into something it isn't. No, I said. You made it into something it is. The room went quiet for a second. I could hear the faint hum of something in the kitchen, the distant sound of a car passing outside. Normal sounds. Everything around this moment still functioning like nothing had changed. Did you ever think about telling me? I asked. She hesitated. That was the first real pause she'd had. I assumed he would, she said. I stared at her. You assumed. Yes. And he assumed you would. She didn't deny that. Which meant it was true. Both of them. Waiting. Letting time pass like that would solve it. And in the meantime, I said slowly, I'm the only one who doesn't know. You weren't being harmed by not knowing. That sentence landed harder than anything else she'd said. Not because it was loud. Because it was calm. Controlled. Like she truly believed it. That's what you think this is about? I asked. Harm. What else would it be about? Trust, I said. Choice. The fact that this is my life and you both decided I didn't need all of it. She didn't respond immediately. For the first time, she looked at me like she didn't have a clean answer ready. I didn't think it would change anything, she said finally. It already has. How? I let out a slow breath. Because now I don't know what else you both decided I didn't need to know. Her expression tightened slightly at that. That's not fair. No, I said. This isn't fair. Another silence. Heavier this time. I didn't do this to hurt you, she said. I know. And he didn't either. I know that too. Then what are you so upset about? That question. That was the moment something shifted completely. Not confusion. Not anger. Clarity. Because she genuinely didn't understand. Or worse. She understood and just didn't see it as a problem. I'm upset, I said slowly, because the two people I trusted most in my life shared something this big about me and decided I didn't need to know it. She held my gaze. But you know now. I let out a quiet breath. Yeah, I said. I do. And somehow, that didn't feel like relief. It felt like standing in the middle of something I couldn't step back out of. I looked down at the photo in my hand again. Then back at her. And you're still married to him, I said. She didn't answer. Not right away. Then she said, technically. That word again. Always that word. Like it could soften everything it touched. I nodded slowly. Right, I said. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully seen before. This wasn't something they were going to fix. Not because they couldn't. Because they didn't think it needed fixing. I didn't stay much longer after that. There wasn't anything left to say that would change what I had just heard. Every answer circled back to the same place. It didn't matter. It was in the past. You were happy. Like happiness built on missing information was still the same thing. I walked out without hugging her. That part stuck with me more than I expected. My mom has always been someone who reaches for you, even when you don't want it. A hand on your arm, a quick hug, something to close a conversation. But this time, she didn't move. She just stayed where she was and let me leave. The drive back felt quieter than the one there. Not because there was less going on in my head, but because something had settled. Not resolved. Just settled into place. By the time I got back to the apartment, it was dark. The lights inside were on, and I could see Tom moving around through the window. For a second, I just sat in the car and watched, trying to match the person I saw with everything I now knew. It didn't line up. And that was the problem. I went inside. He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like he'd been waiting. How did it go? He asked. I set my keys down slowly. She knew, I said. He nodded once. I figured. Since the beginning. Another nod. That makes sense. That makes sense. I stared at him. You both just decided not to tell me. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He pushed himself off the counter, standing up straighter now. We didn't think it would matter. You keep saying that. Because it's true. It's true for you, I said. Not for me. He walked a little closer, careful, like he was approaching something fragile. I didn't want to lose you over something that was already over, he said. That hit differently. Not defensive. Honest. So you knew I might leave if I found out, I said. I knew it would complicate things. Complicate, I repeated quietly. That word again. It's not a simple situation. It would have been simple if you had told me. No, he said. It wouldn't have. Yes, it would have. I would have had all the information. I would have made a choice. And what choice do you think you would have made? That question landed heavier than anything else. Because I didn't have an immediate answer. Not because I didn't care. Because I genuinely didn't know. That's not the point, I said. It is, he replied. You're acting like I took something from you, but I didn't. You took my ability to choose. I gave you a life where that didn't matter. That's not the same thing. We stood there for a second, both of us holding on to our own version of the same reality. I love you, he said finally. I looked at him. I know. That hasn't changed. It has for me. He flinched slightly at that. Not dramatically. Just enough to show it landed. I'm still the same person, he said. You are, I agreed. But now I know something about you that I didn't before. And that changes everything? Yes. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a step or two before stopping again. What do you want me to say? He asked. That I should have told you? Fine. I should have told you. That's not enough. What do you want then? I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. And that scared me more than anything else. I don't know what my life is right now, I said finally. It's the same life you had yesterday. No, I said. It's not. What's different? I stared at him. Everything, I said quietly. He shook his head slightly. You're letting one piece of information rewrite everything. It's not just information, I said. It's context. It's truth. It's the past. It's the present too, I said. Because legally, you're still married to my mom. He didn't respond to that. Not directly. We can fix that, he said instead. Fix. Like this was something simple. Now, I asked. After 4 years? Yes. Why no? Because it matters to you. That answer. It didn't feel right. Not because it was wrong. Because it was incomplete. So it didn't matter before, I said. It didn't feel urgent. But now it does. Yes. Because I found out. He didn't deny that. And that silence said everything. I sat down slowly, the weight of everything pressing in a way it hadn't before. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just constant. What else? I asked. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? What else have you decided didn't matter enough to tell me? Nothing. How am I supposed to believe that? Because I'm telling you. You were telling me before too, I said. Just not everything. He didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. The room felt smaller again. Like there wasn't enough space for both versions of the truth to exist at the same time. I need time, I said finally. He nodded. Okay. I'm not saying I'm leaving, I added. I know. But I'm not saying I'm staying either. That landed harder. I could see it in his face. I understand, he said. I nodded once. Because that was all I had left to give in that moment. Later that night, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes that suddenly felt pointless. Boise didn't feel like a fresh start anymore. It felt like something built on top of something unfinished. And I kept coming back to the same thought. They both knew. For years. And they were both okay with me not knowing. Not because they hated me. Not because they wanted to hurt me. But because they decided it wasn't important enough. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid in bed next to Tom, listening to the small, normal sounds he made when he shifted in his sleep, and all I could think was how familiar everything still felt, and how wrong that felt at the same time. There was no sudden hatred. No moment where I looked at him and didn't recognize him anymore. That would have been easier. Instead, it was worse. Because I still recognized him. I still knew the way he breathed when he was asleep. The way he reached out slightly without waking up, like he expected me to still be there. And I was. That's what made it complicated. By morning, I hadn't made a decision. I just knew I couldn't sit in that apartment all day pretending things were normal. Tom had already left early for work. He didn't wake me up, didn't try to talk again. I think he understood that pushing anything right now would only make it worse. Or maybe he just didn't know what else to say. I stayed in bed longer than I should have. Not because I was tired. Because getting up meant continuing. Eventually, I did. I made coffee, didn't drink it, and ended up sitting at the small table by the window just staring out at nothing. Everything looked the same outside. Cars passing. People walking. Someone jogging past like it was just another day. And for them, it was. For me, it wasn't. Around mid-morning, I texted Hope. I didn't explain everything. I just said, "Are you free?" She called me instead of replying. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. That alone almost broke me. Because she knew. Not what happened. Just that something had. "I need to talk," I said. "Come over," she said without hesitation. Hope lived about 15 minutes away, near the clinic where she worked. I don't remember the drive. I just remember sitting in her living room with a cup of coffee in my hand that I also didn't drink. She didn't push right away. She sat across from me, waiting. And that made it easier to start. "I found out something about Tom," I said. Her expression shifted slightly. "What kind of something?" I hesitated. Because saying it out loud made it real in a way nothing else had yet. "He was married before," I said. "That's not." To my mom. That stopped her. Completely. "What?" she said. "And they never divorced." She just stared at me. Like she was trying to find a version of that sentence that made sense. "They were separated," I added quickly. "Years ago. Before I met him. But legally, it was never finalized." Hope leaned back slowly. "Okay," she said. "Okay, that's a lot. That's one way to put it." "And he knew the whole time?" "Yes." "And your mom knew?" "Yes." "And neither of them told you?" "No." She let out a long breath. Wow. That word felt small compared to everything else. "Yeah," I said. We sat there for a second. Then she leaned forward slightly. "Do you think he was trying to hide it, or do you think he convinced himself it didn't matter?" That question caught me off guard. Because it wasn't what I expected. "I don't know," I said honestly. "He doesn't seem like the type to be intentionally deceptive," she said carefully. "He wasn't hiding it actively," I said. "But he also wasn't telling me." "That's still a choice." "I know. And your mom." She said she didn't want to complicate things. Hope shook her head slightly. "That's not her call to make." I said the same thing. Another pause. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I don't know." "Do you want to stay with him?" That question felt heavier than anything else we'd said. Because it forced me to look at something I'd been avoiding. "I don't know," I said again. "Okay," she said. "Then let's break it down." I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because it sounded so simple. "He lied to you," she said. "He didn't lie," I said automatically. "He omitted something huge." "Yeah." And your mom was part of it. Yeah. Does that feel like something you can move past? I looked down at my hands. I don't know if it's about moving past it, I said. It's about whether I can trust them again. That's fair. I keep thinking about how normal everything felt, I said. All those dinners, all those visits, they were both there, acting like nothing was wrong. That's the part that would bother me too, she said. It's like I was the only one in the room who didn't know the full story. You were. I nodded. And now that I do, I don't know how to go back to seeing them the same way. You probably can't, she said. That honesty didn't hurt. It just settled. So what do I do? I asked. Hope didn't answer right away. Because there wasn't a simple answer. I think you need to figure out what matters more to you, she said finally. The relationship you have with him, or the fact that it was built without all the information. That's not a fair choice. No, she said. But it's the one you have. We sat there for a while after that, not really talking. Just letting everything exist without trying to fix it. When I left her place, I didn't feel better. But I felt clearer. Not about what I was going to do. About what I was dealing with. This wasn't just about a legal technicality. It was about trust. About choice. About the fact that two people had decided, separately but in the same way, that I didn't need to know something this big. And now that I did, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. By the time I got back to the apartment, the sun was already starting to set. Everything looked the same. That was the part that kept throwing me off. The same couch. The same half-packed boxes. The same quiet space we had been living in like nothing underneath it was unfinished. Tom was already home. He was sitting at the table, not doing anything, just waiting. I could tell by the way he looked up when I walked in that he'd been doing that for a while. How are you? He asked. It wasn't a casual question. It was careful. Measured. I talked to Hope, I said, setting my bag down. He nodded slowly. Okay. I stood there for a second before sitting across from him. Neither of us rushed into it. Because we both knew this conversation wasn't going to fix anything. I've been thinking all day, I said. I figured. And I still don't have a clean answer. That's okay. I looked at him. I don't think it is. He didn't respond. I took a breath. I keep going back to the same thing, I said. Not the fact that you were married to her. Not even the legal part. Then what? The silence. He looked down at the table. I know. You both knew. For years. And you were both okay with me not knowing. We thought. I know what you thought, I cut in. That it didn't matter. That it was in the past. That telling me would just complicate things. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. And maybe you're right, I said. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything back then. He looked up slightly. But I didn't get to make that decision, I continued. You made it for me. I didn't think I was taking anything from you. You were, I said. You just didn't see it that way. Silence settled between us again. Not tense this time. Just heavy. I can't go back to not knowing this, I said. I know. And I can't pretend it doesn't change how I see things. I understand. I watched him for a second. Trying to find something familiar to hold on to. Something that made this easier. It was still there. That was the problem. I still love you, I said quietly. His expression shifted slightly. I love you too. And that's what makes this hard. I know. I let out a slow breath. But love isn't the issue right now. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. It's trust, I said. It's the fact that I don't know where the line is anymore. What matters enough to tell me and what doesn't. I've told you everything, he said. Now, I replied. After I found out. That distinction mattered. We both knew it. So, what are you saying? He asked. I sat there for a second. Because this was the part where I had to decide something. Not everything. Just the next step. I'm not leaving tonight, I said. He nodded slowly. Okay. But I'm not moving forward like nothing happened either. That's fair. I need space, I said. Real space. Not just a few days of pretending we're okay. He looked like he expected that. How much space? I don't know yet. He leaned back slightly, absorbing that. Are you thinking about leaving? He asked. I'm thinking about everything, I said. That was the most honest answer I had. Another pause. I can fix the legal part, he said. I can finalize everything. I nodded. I know you can. And I will. I know. But that doesn't fix everything, he added. No, I said. It doesn't. Because this was never just about paperwork. We sat there for a while longer, neither of us trying to force a resolution. There wasn't one. Not yet. Later that night, I moved some of my things into the spare room. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors. No raised voices. Just distance. The kind you can feel even when everything around you looks the same. Over the next few weeks, things shifted slowly. Tom started the process of finalizing the divorce. Real steps this time. Paperwork. Calls. Actual movement. Not because it suddenly mattered legally. Because it mattered to me. My mom texted a few times. I didn't respond right away. When I finally did, it was short. Not angry. Just distant. That relationship didn't break completely. But it changed. In a way I don't think either of us knows how to fix yet. As for me and Tom, we didn't end things. But we didn't go back to what we were either. Something in the middle. Something quieter. More careful. And maybe that's the part that's hardest to explain. Because from the outside, it probably looks like we stayed together. Like nothing really changed. But it did. Everything did. Not in a loud, dramatic way. In a quiet one. The kind that sits underneath everything else. I still don't know if we'll make it. I don't know if time will smooth this out or if it'll just keep sitting there, waiting. But I do know one thing now that I didn't before. Love isn't always enough to make something feel whole. And sometimes, the things people decide not to tell you matter more than anything they ever say. So I guess what I'm asking is, if you found out your partner and your parent had both kept something like this from you for years, would you try to rebuild, or would you walk away before it breaks something you can't fix?